Hello YouTube, Snowflarky and I'm here today with my Dark Magician Trap Control deck profile. This is a deck I've put together recently after the changes of the Banless Unlimited Skill Drain, and just going through some cards in my collection, I realized I had a pretty cool way to play Dark Magician without needing all the expensive combos with more of a Trap Control style deck that just revolves around recycling Dark Magician onto the field and taking advantage of great trap cards that synergize well with this card. So pretty cool. Definitely a fun way for me to pick up and play a deck that has Dark Magician in it and whatnot. So with that, let's get into the card by card. Starting off with our monsters, I am playing 3 copies of Dark Magician. Dark Magician is, of course, the namesake monster of the deck. It's Yugioh's iconic boss monster from the Duel Monsters era, but to us, it's just a 2500 attack normal monster with 7 stars. 2500 attack is a solid, decent attack, and really the great thing about this card is the Dark Magician name, of course, just lends itself to a whole archetype that has been built around it and gives us a lot of support cards we can be using. It's also really fun to play with the all the different arts of Dark Magician that are available. Next, I am playing 3 copies of Magician's Rod. I'm still waiting for one Magician's Rod here to come in the mail, so I have just a proxy filler for the time. But Magician's Rod is a pretty cool monster. Essentially, when this card is normal summoned, you can add a spell or trap card from the deck to your hand that specifically lists the Dark Magician in its text, which is awesome. Gets us a lot of key support cards that we need to make things move. And of course, during your opponent's turn, if you activate a spell or trap card or effect while this card is in the graveyard, you contribute a spellcaster type monster to add this card back to your hand. That's pretty cool. That means you can normal summon it and get its effect off again. Definitely a card we want to see in our opener to get us to some of the key Dark Magician cards that make this deck work. And lastly, for the monsters, I am playing 3 copies of Magikaribo. Again, waiting for the last Magikaribo in the mail, so I have a token to fill a spot for the time being. Magikaribo is a pretty cool card that recently came out in Battles of Chaos, and while not a bit too late for a regular Dark Magician deck for it to be useful, it is very useful in this type of build. So during the main or battle phase, if you took damage by battle or an opponent's card effect this turn, you can send this card from your hand to the graveyard to special summon Dark Magician or Dark Magician Girl from your deck or graveyard. So that's pretty cool. Pulls it right out. And that's something we want. And then, of course, if a face-up spellcaster type monster you control is destroyed by battle or an opponent's card effect, you can add this card from your graveyard to your hand. So that's pretty cool. That gives us a little resource loop of Magikaribo and a Dark Magician, and then when Dark Magician goes, we get Magikaribo back, and that keeps that going at full force, and that is pretty awesome. Definitely warrants running 3. Now that is it for the monsters. Very low monster count in this deck because it is a trap control style, so not your typical combo build. Next up, we are going into our spells. Starting off, I am playing 2 copies of Dark Magical Circle. This is a pretty cool continuous spell card for Dark Magician. When it's activated, we look at the top 3 cards of our deck, and then we can either add a Dark Magician or a spell or trap that specifically lists Dark Magician in those top 3 cards from our deck to our hand. And then the rest we place on top of the deck in any order that we choose, which is pretty nice. And then the main selling point of this is that when Dark Magician is normal or special summoned to our field, except during the damage step, you can target a card your opponent controls and banish it. This deck can summon Dark Magician a lot, so we are going to gain lots of advantage off of banishing our opponent's cards. Next up, I'm playing 1 copy of Illusion Magic. Illusion Magic says that we tribute a spellcaster type monster to add up to 2 copies of Dark Magician from our deck or graveyard to the hand. We really need access to Dark Magician, so we're going to play 1 copy of this card. If we have Magician's Rod and no Dark Magician in sight, we can play Magician's Rod to search Illusion Magic and tribute off our Magician's Rod to add 2 Dark Magicians. So that is the main reason that card is in here. Next, I'm playing one copy of Thousand Knives. If you control a face-up Dark Magician, target a monster your opponent controls and destroy that target. Pretty cool. Just a spell card that removes a monster, but most importantly, it can be searched out of the deck with Eternal Soul, which is great. Gets us some extra card advantage, and if we don't have any extra Dark Magicians to summon, lets us still have a cool action with Eternal Soul. And likewise, I am playing a copy of Dark Magic Attack. Dark Magic Attack, of course, is a card that says if we control Dark Magician, we can destroy all spell and trap cards on our opponent's side of the field. Pretty awesome. Also searchable with Eternal Soul, which is the main reason we would play it. Otherwise, I would say these cards might not be good enough to make the cut. But since you can search them for free, thin the deck, that is pretty sweet. Next up, I'm playing two copies of Fusion Deployment. Fusion Deployment is a spell card that says we reveal a fusion monster in our extra deck, and we can special summon a material that is specifically named on that card. There are lots of fusions for Dark Magician, so we can use this to pull Dark Magician right out of the deck. Now, do note when we play this card, we can't special summon any monsters from the extra deck except fusion monsters that turn, but that's alright. In this build, we are opting not to use the extra deck much at all. So we will gladly just instead pull Dark Magician out of our deck. Next up, I'm playing two copies of Flawless Perfection of the Tenyi. Flawless Perfection of the Tenyi is a really good field spell for this deck. It makes all non-effect monsters on the field unaffected by monster effects, which is pretty sweet. Our Dark Magician is one of those non-effect monsters, given that it's a normal monster. And that also means it works with the second effect, that if we control a face-down or non-effect monster and our opponent special summons an effect monster, except during the damage step, we draw 2 cards. Draw 2. Awesome. We love it. That gets us more cards for a future play and keeps this deck fueled, and that makes this card very powerful. One of my favorites in the game. Next, I'm playing a copy of Terraforming. It searches a field spell. It can get us Flawless Perfection of Tenyi. Easy as that. Next up, I am playing 3 copies of Pot of Extravagance. Pot of Extravagance is a pretty sweet spell card that we banish 3 to 6 random extra deck cards face down, and if we do, we draw a card for every 3 that we did. So banishing 6 draws us 2 cards, and all we give up is that we can't use any more draw effects this turn, and that's no big deal. Gladly will give it up for a Pot of Greed. And last, I'm playing 1 Fury of the Karyushin. This is a spell card that adds a Torrential Tribute from the deck to our hand. Torrential Tribute is a very powerful disruptive trap that can do a lot of damage to an opponent, and in this deck, where we can constantly be summoning Dark Magician back out even right after it leaves the field, we don't mind blowing up our own board at all. This card does have a second effect that protects water monsters from being destroyed by card effects, but that does not apply here because we're not playing any water monsters. We're just using it to search Torrential Tribute. And that is it for the spell cards. Next, we're going to go into our trap cards. Starting off, I am playing 3 copies of Eternal Soul. Eternal Soul is a crazy good continuous trap card for this deck, and part of what makes this trap control version work. Essentially, every Dark Magician in your monster zone is unaffected by your opponent's card effects. Pretty powerful. Now, of course, if this face-up card leaves the field, destroy all monsters you control, so that can be pretty bad. You got to make sure that when this card's up, you can protect it. Normally, that's, we have a lot of ways to do that in here. But it's definitely worth the risk because you also get access to one of these other 2 effects once per turn. You can either special summon Dark Magician from your hand or graveyard, which is pretty sweet. That will proc our Dark Magical Circle, get us more Dark Magicians on board, swarm the field, allow us to replenish our field even after we wipe it with, say, Torrential. Or we can add a Dark Magic Attack or Thousand Knives from the deck to our hand, which is why we're playing 1 copy of each of them in this build. Because if we don't have any more Dark Magicians to summon, if it's already on the field, we can just add one of those cards, thin our deck out a card, and, the cards do have a use, so that is pretty sweet. A great trap card is really what lets this trap control deck work. The other thing that makes this build of it really work is the fact that we got Skill Drain back at 3. That is right. Skill Drain is back at 3. We can now pay 1,000 life points to negate the effect of all monster effects that are on the field. Not a big deal because our main monster is, of course, a normal monster, and that means we don't have to worry about negating its effect. And, that effect is just so powerful that it will win so many matchups that it is a great card to have. It will it will carry this deck, and you know, since we're mainly using a normal monster, we might as well play it. Next, I am playing 3 copies of Solemn Judgment. Solemn Judgment is a really great counter trap that basically says we can pay half our life points to negate a summon or a spell or trap card activation. Very important for protecting our Eternal Soul or our skill drain, so that if our opponent draws the out, we can say no to that. And very important, you know, paying our half our life points is no big deal for being able to stop a key card that could bring our opponent back in the game. Next up, I am playing 3 copies of Torrential Tribute. Torrential Tribute is, of course, a great trap card that says you can activate this card when a monster is summoned, destroy all monsters on the field. So pretty cool. We're glad to wipe our own board because Eternal Soul will quickly replenish it with Dark Magicians. And if we're disrupting an opponent's combo with this at a right time, it can be very powerful, very annoying to deal with, especially in casual play like where I play this deck usually. And just a pretty cool card. Good to have, and since we're not punished by it, very glad to max it out at 3. Next, I'm playing 3 copies of Solemn Strike. Solemn Strike is a counter trap that allows us to pay 1,500 life points that when a monster would be special summoned or a monster's effect is activated, we can negate that summon or that activation and destroy the card. Pretty cool. Can deal with lots of problematic cards and just, you know, pretty powerful, and no reason not to play it. And then last, kind of a spice card that I like, 2 copies of Champion's Vigilance. Champion's Vigilance is basically just Solemn Judgment, but instead of paying half our life points, we have to control a face-up level 7 or higher normal monster. Luckily, Dark Magician counts, and we have Dark Magician pretty readily. So, you know, there definitely keeps this card alive often. Now, sometimes you might have this card and not Dark Magician in an unlucky hand. If that's the case and you don't like that at all, you can gladly switch this out for any other kind of trap card, any other good just powerhouse trap card. Maybe you want to run some goes in match style floodgates, whatever you're looking for. It can be done. You can also play the Fist of the Unrivaled Tenyi here, which is pretty nice. But I really like Champion's Vigilance a lot, so I'm just running it because I can, and it's fun. And that is it for the main deck. Just to quickly go over extra deck, it's not that big of a deal because we're not going to be going into our extra deck very much in this Dark Magician build. So basically what you want to use your extra deck for is 15 cards to have Extravagance fodder, and then of course some of the fusion monsters that mention Dark Magician at 3s so that you don't banish all of them off of Extravagance. Probably the most budget one to access if you don't want to spend a lot of money is Amulet Dragon. It's got Dark Magician's name right in there, so I play 3 of it. The next most budget one, of course, Dark Paladin, which is has Dark Magician listed right there. And just another one I have that I play. I do have a copy of Dark Flare Knight, which is pretty cool. You don't need to load all 15 extra deck cards with these. Normally I would say if you got 6, it would be pretty good. Just a playset of these 2 is probably enough to suffice. But if you got Dragoons and whatnot from other deck, or the Dark Magicians, Dark Cavalry, all those things are good options. You just need to load your extra deck with 15 cards and have enough targets that have Dark Magician in its name that you can use Fusion Deployment, you know, and get them out of the deck. Now, if you wanted to play Fist of the Unrivaled Tenyi instead of Champion's Vigilance, that has a second effect that lets you special summon non-effect monsters when it's destroyed by your opponent, which is pretty cool. Then you could play some copies of Blue Eyes Ultimate Dragon, Master of Oz, just really powerful non-effect fusions off of that effect. But that's basically all I have to say about the extra deck. Run 15 cards, run targets that have Dark Magician's name if you're playing Fusion Deployment. Well, that is it for my Dark Magician deck profile. So, pretty fun. It's not your usual Dark Magician combo, but it is a pretty cheap way to play a deck that technically uses Dark Magician. And I kind of like this style because I don't like fusion summoning them off into the Dark Magician. I like sitting on Dark Magician itself. getting able to look at the iconic artwork while I play. So it's pretty cool. I like how it plays. Blue Eyes Trap Control definitely inspired me to put this together, and I was only missing a couple cards that I decided to order. So figured that it'd work. It's pretty fun, and it's a cool way to use Yugi's iconic monster. But let me know what you think. Let me know if you're on Team Dark Magician or Team Blue Eyes in the comments, and what you might be doing with Dark Magician. I would love to hear how you folks have been playing around with it. Anyway, I will catch you all in the next one. Thanks for tuning in.